Hi, and welcome to today's episode. Thank you for joining and sharing this conversation. I'm joined today by Kat Moody, who lives quite close to me here in the Northeast, and I've met Kat several times now when we've really connected. I don't want to give too much away about what we're going to be talking about, except to say that Kat is someone who is really dedicated to empowering and inspiring other girls and women, which of course is completely what I'm all about. So we're very aligned there. And she's doing this through sharing her story, which is what I think really connected us when I first heard Kat's story. Yeah, there was just so much in there that I could resonate with. And that's what we're going to be sharing in this conversation of Women's Health Unwrapped today. So welcome to the podcast, Kat.
Thanks for having me, Nicola. I'm really pleased to be here.
Yeah, me too, because, I try to bring a blend of different types of people to the podcast. That we've got people who do work in specific health and wellness areas, in areas related directly to women's health, but also people who are real, like you, who are working in health and wellness, as people will find out, but who do have such a powerful story to share that I know will impact others. So to get us going, I'd just love to know from you what your most impactful habit is in your toolkit at the moment to help you feel healthy and well.
Well, I suppose for me, the biggest thing, which is going to sound really obvious, is breathing, um, which is kind of something now that I wasn't consciously doing before, which again sounds a little kind of strange when you say that out loud because it's something we all do. But this constant ability to kind of mindfully breathe is something that I'm really relying on a lot, especially if I feel anxious or if I'm kind of feeling heightened anxiety in any kind of situation, or stressed, or just feeling negative. Even this ability to kind of breathe mindfully, long deep breaths, I'm really finding that that is helping, and it's helping to kind of keep my mindset level and to allow me to kind of do all the other things that I like to do without being weighed down by whatever the negative feeling is. So the mindful breathing um, is definitely something that's kind of the go-to at the moment.
I love that. And it's not silly at all. I know why you're saying that,
Uh-huh.
because a lot of people do just think, well, we breathe and we don't think
Hmm.
about the fact that we're breathing. But there's lots of stats, isn't there, on how most of us are breathing wrongly.
Hmm.
Like we've shifted from the way we were designed to breathe as humans to be breathing from up here in
Hmm.
our like chest and upper part of our lungs and breathing through our mouth. And it's really disruptive to our nervous system. And so I love that you've shared that, because one, it's something any one of us could build as a
Hmm.
habit because it's free.
Hmm.
All habits can be challenging to build, but this is a free one. So at least it's got that
Hmm.
going for it to start with. But it also does bring so many different benefits to help us in lots of ways. It's ultimately managing stress, but in turn, it's also helping to regulate our hormones better.
Hmm.
It helps us be more mindful, which in turn does play out
Hmm.
with reducing stress and so on. And so, yeah, it's a fantastic one to share and a good
Hmm.
insight. So I thought what I would ask you to begin with is to give us some words to describe how you see yourself, like right now at this stage of your life.
Oh, that's very. I don't think anyone's ever asked me that. And for all, I'm trying to have this kind of more healthier mindset and kind of outlook. I'm not a person that kind of would often describe myself with positive words. Um, so that is a really, no one's ever asked me that question. So um, I suppose words that I would use to describe myself now are, can I say a work in progress, or is that too?
Yeah, just whatever
uh,
comes up. And you'll
yeah,
see where I'm going with this. And it's because I know you that I'm asking this
yeah.
question.
So yeah, well, um, I don't feel like I'm the finished product of where I kind of want to be, both kind of career wise and personally. But I feel like I'm on the right path now. So I feel for me, words that would describe me are ambitious, determined, and um, willing now to embrace change and failure more than I used to be. So, but definitely a work in progress.
Yeah. And I talk about health not having a finish line because I think a lot of women put pressure on themselves when they think about being healthier
Hmm.
to like get the job done and then think, well, that's it. And then I can go back to normal. And then what comes in with that is that it's too hard to then stay healthy because it isn't maintainable. It's,
Hmm.
it's something that you can kind of box in and go, well, I just do it and then that's it. It's a job done. Because I think our mentality generally in the era we're in is, that things are very transactional. So you do something, that's done, you move on to the next thing. But you're absolutely right in that life is a work in progress, and any kind of growth, whether it's, professional or physiological or mental with your health, is
Hmm.
always ongoing, isn't it? There's never a finish line. And I think that's really important to highlight, but also for you to say that that isn't something that means you're not good enough right now, that being a work in progress. If you could get to 80 and say I'm still a work in progress, I think would be a brilliant thing, because it means you're committed to
Hmm.
your journey and growth, which is what we're going to dive into. Because if
Yeah.
I then said, right, go back to kind of teenage Kat at 14, 15, like, what would you use to describe that younger version of yourself back then?
Um, Lost. That was probably the main description. Lost, unconfident, and um, I think that's when the kind of imposter kind of syndrome and that kind of mentality probably set in, really,
Mm,
um, when you're young and trying to fit in. So yeah, I think those words would probably be the description words if we're kind of looking all the way back then. I mean, I'm 41 now, so um, and
mm,
I do still sometimes think some of those traits still come into play now. But
mhm,
yeah, when I was that young, those were kind of that would be the default setting for me.
mm. Yeah. And so to kind of get us in your story, then, this
Hmm.
younger version of you who was feeling lost and had, I guess, a lot of self-doubt, like, kind of take us back and start your story, because you tell it so well, like how life was then, and what shifted to mean that today you can say, I am work in progress, and I'm more confident and capable and trust myself and so on.
Hmm. Um, well, I suppose to start with is probably be useful to give a little bit of kind of a overview as to who I am um, now, because I think that's I think it's important in the journey. So now a qualified lawyer. I've just recently been promoted at work. I'm feeling that my career is going in the direction that I want it to, and I'm really proud with the progress that I've been making. But the journey to get to that point was quite difficult, and not necessarily one that I had really fully grasped how difficult it would be until I set out on it. So I grew up in a single parent family, which was quite common in the council estate that I grew up on in South Shields. Um, so I lived with my mum and my brothers, and we didn't really have a great deal of, again, like a lot of people where I grew up, it wasn't, there wasn't really many kind of people who were living above the poverty line. I think it was very, it was kind of a we grew up on benefits, kind of like I say, single parent family, long term workless kind of family and environment, and therefore there wasn't really many people who were there, kind of encouraging you to look for further education, get a job. Um, have aspirations beyond just being able to pay the bills. And so I think that's probably the thing that made me different to a lot of the children that I grew up with, because a lot of the kids on the estate that I was living on did, their goal was to get a house, get a council house, pay the bills, and just follow in their parents' footsteps. Whereas for me, I don't know what it was that made me, have a different mindset, but I just was so unhappy as a child that I did want to do something greater than what was kind of being presented as an option. And I think that's because a lot of people thought, and statistically it's true, children who come from long-term workless families and children that have been in the care system, which is me and my brothers did spend a little bit time in foster care. Children from those types of backgrounds are less likely to be afforded opportunities to progress. You don't feel very empowered as a child from those type of backgrounds when you're feeling quite restrained in kind of your options. And so I decided that I did want to do something more. So I went to college and then university, which was rare because I don't think I knew anybody who'd been to university. There was certainly nobody in my family had been there. And I think that made it difficult as well, because I don't think the people that I was surrounding myself with in my family really fully appreciated how important it was, how difficult it was, because they couldn't relate to what I was experiencing because no one had done that before. So I think that's kind of where feeling lost and a little bit unsure about my capabilities and this imposter syndrome kind of stepped in. But I mean, to go to university, to go to college, I remember talking about saying that I wanted to be a lawyer. I knew very early I wanted to be a lawyer. And again, it wasn't because I'd ever met any lawyers. I didn't know any professional people. I'd watched TV shows and absolutely fell in love with Ally McBeal, which people laugh when I say that. But that was kind of, I didn't have any real people to look up to. So fictional characters were kind of who I was aspiring to be. And so, yeah, I decided I had no idea what that really meant. I wanted to be a lawyer. I wanted the fancy suit. I wanted to work in a nice office. Obviously, the TV glamorizes it. It's not like that at all. But yeah, I had this idea. And I remember when I said that I wanted to be a lawyer, it was kind of, I wasn't taken seriously. And whether that was kind of because of, where I came from, or the kind of, I didn't have any finances. I had no financial backing to kind of make these dreams a reality. It was just kind of felt very much like a pipe dream. And I think a lot of people, instead of encouraging, probably also had that mindset. So then I didn't feel like there was much belief from other people, and therefore that made me doubt myself as well. Even at school, you go to the careers lesson and ask you what you want to do. And I was very clear. I wanted to be a solicitor, and I was sent to work in a hairdresser's to sweep floor for a week. So it was like, I feel like that barrier to achieving goals and achieving aims, or having just aspirations outside of what kind of statistically you're expected to do, I think that was really challenging. And I think that was what set me on to quite a negative mindset. So although I had this dream, and I did obviously now eventually do it, I think what I didn't account for, as well as it being tough to kind of learn, understand the law, secure finances, have quite a few jobs all at the same time just to kind of get through college, get through university. What I hadn't accounted for was the mental health side of things, because nobody had ever spoken to, like when you were younger in the 80s, no one was telling you about your mental health. And as you were growing up, when you went to college and university, it was all academic. There was nobody giving you lessons on life skills and kind of how to cope with the pressure. So yeah, I think the journey to kind of where I'm getting now was quite challenging, but I think the lasting impression that it's made for me is the mental health side of things. I'm so much more in tune with that and interested, and kind of a big advocate for mental health now, because it's so important. And I still don't know if people who are now aspiring to be lawyers or in any professional capacity, how much is being taught to the younger generation about having the positive mindset to go along with the ambition, and to go along with how to deal with failure, or rejection
Mm.
or imposter syndrome. So, there's loads of things that come out of it. But the beginning of the journey was very much driven by just knowing from very early on that I wanted something more than what was being offered.
Mm. And it's so fascinating that, and it sounds like you have thought and reflected about this a lot. It's like, yeah, what was it that made you, as you say, statistic, like almost, what's it called when it's a guaranteed winner sort of thing, like you were
Mhm.
statistically guaranteed to stay under the poverty
Mhm.
line, living as you were, in a council estate, perhaps not even working on benefits
Mhm.
and so on. Like, yeah, it's just so fascinating, isn't it, to think like, what was it that got underneath, like, and lit that fire in your belly to make you go, I'm going to be a solicitor. And even when you were pushed into doing work experience as a hairdresser, to still believe that it was possible to be the
Mhm.
solicitor when those that are supposed to know best are telling you otherwise.
Yeah.
And, yeah, I mean, maybe it was just Ali McBeal. It could be that, seeing that, because I
Mhm.
think, like, for me, my background's, very similar, slightly different. I wouldn't say my upbringing was as hard financially. I think people thought my family had more money than they did. Everything was
Mhm.
debt, and there was a lot of financial
Mhm.
worry and stress in my family. And beyond my mum and dad, both their families were very poor,
Mhm.
really struggling to get by and so on. But my dad's stories of travel when he was in the Navy lit something in me that meant I wanted something different,
Mhm.
because where I went to school in Sunderland was very run down, very, very low working class. Most of the people in my school were in families similar to how you describe yourself, living on
Mhm.
benefits in council property. And, some of them had parents in prison even,
Mhm.
teenage pregnancies at 13, 14 and so on. And yet, yeah, I decided to do something different, go to university. And then at 19, I went to Camp America. And that was the start of my mental health decline. And I, similar to how you're describing, think, I was doing something that felt weird and abnormal, because nobody else I was friends with were doing things like that. I
Mhm.
went to
Mhm.
university in Sunderland, lived at home, worked in a proper job in a call centre and bar work to get by,
Mhm.
same as you. So yeah, it's just fascinating, isn't it, to think that you were capable
Mhm.
of having that dream, but then actually pursuing that dream, and one
Yeah.
that was really tough.
I know I was thinking about this kind of yesterday, when I was thinking about the chat that we were going to have. And for all I had no kind of positive role models, in the sense of anyone kind of had went beyond, that no one had, as I say, a professional job. I didn't really know many people who actually worked, to be honest. That, although I come from a large extended family, my family's never been like a close knit family. So, in the wider family, people had jobs and seemed, to me, from kind of my perspective at that time, seemed quite wealthy, and compared to what we had. But my small family, my mum and my brothers, yeah, there was just us. And at that point, I didn't really see my dad very often. It was kind of, we used to see him on a weekend up until a particular age, and then that stopped. And so we didn't really have anybody who kind of was kind of shown us that you could do better. But what I did reflect on is, actually there were periods of time when my mum did have a part-time job, and she actually used to have a job for a really long period of my childhood, where she used to work on the flower store in the market in South Shields. And it was at the time, I don't think I really realised, but actually that was, she absolutely loved it. She loved being there. She loved socialising with people, and kind of everyone knew who she was, and she was kind of quite a prominent figure on the Shields market, and she used to sometimes take me along to help out. So from a very early age, although I wasn't old enough to get a job, when she did work, when she was able to, and even though it wasn't earning a great deal of money, but it did instill early on that there was that real need to be able to be as independent as you can for yourself, whatever that looks like, in whatever role you can find and whatever job you can take. And there was another time when she used to work at the magic shop in the Metro Centre, the Magic Box, and so what I took away from that job that she had was, we lived in South Shields. She didn't drive, and she had 3 kids. We were all young, and she took a job at the Metro Centre, and that wasn't. I mean, now as an adult, it would have been an absolute trek. I think she would have had to get a couple of buses or a train, or to get there, do a couple of hours for minimum wage, and then come back. And again, I don't think as a child I'd really appreciated that was her doing her best, trying. And I think that actually did instill in me this, I did have a role model to look up to in that sense, that, try your best, do what you can. And so although, she didn't, it wasn't kind of well-paid jobs or a professional or a career, it was still very much, she tried her hardest to do what she could do in the situation that we were in. And I think that did, and I feel terrible now because I haven't really thought about it from kind of, oh, well, actually that was demonstrating to me this real, necessity to put yourself in a position where you can be as best as you can be with the circumstances that you face yourself in. And it's only on reflection now that I've thought, and it's the same when you're younger. I didn't realise how, I was quite I think, not negative, but probably quite a sad child sometimes. And always kind of worrying about not fitting in. Why don't we have the same as what all these other kids have, where everyone else has got branded gear and all the stuff that, as it get older, you realise doesn't care. But as a child, you're very aware that you're not fitting in. You're very aware that other kids at school know you've been to foster care, or know that you live on benefits, or know that you wearing your brother's hand-me-downs or whatever. And so I remember just being quite resentful or angry, thinking, well, why can't you just do that for us? Why can't we have that? And then as you get older, I mean, I don't have children, but, I've got plenty of friends with children and children in the family. And you see now as an adult how hard people are working just to provide the basics. And so now I do feel kind of, I wish that I was more in tune with kind of things when I was younger from that point of view, because whereas I was just thinking, why don't we, questioning the why, and feeling quite, feeling that it was unfair that I didn't fit in with other people. I never really quite, as a child, and you don't, I think, see it from how difficult it must have been being a single parent on benefits, 3 children, trying to find jobs where you can and not really succeeding, and kind of always coming back to the same point of kind of feeling that you're not giving your children everything that they need or want. And I think as an adult, I'm only really seeing that from that point of view now. So I think that's been quite a revelation as well, because I think you see your parents or whoever's taking care of you in a particular light when you're growing up, and you can't really see it from their point of view until maybe sometimes too late.
And I think that's very normal though, isn't it? And that goes for lots of things. We make judgment, I think most of us anyway, on so many things, even if it's just somebody's way of driving when we're out on the road, like right now. But we don't know what's going on in their life and what's led them to maybe be that angry person having road rage or something else, and it's the same with our mothers. And I was the same as you. We didn't have anything branded. Everything was either from the market or hand me down from older cousins that I had. And yeah, I felt like that put me at a disadvantage. And so I totally resonate with that. And yeah, I look back and I was one of three as well, and think, how hard it must have been. I've got one child and I know what that felt like, having to wash the school uniform
Yeah.
for all those years and get it ready. But then for three kids, and plus the stress of financial worry and feeding your kids and looking after them. And yeah, so, but it sounds like now you've taken that and you're empowered by having seen not just what your mum had to do to help you all survive and be able to go to school and grow up and so on, but also what you as a person had to go through. And so
Yeah.
I want to kind of ask a bit more. I guess this leads into what you've mentioned about mental health and the challenges you had as you embarked on your studies to become a solicitor, and yeah, talk to me a bit about that. Then how was your mental health negatively impacted?
Yeah. Well, I think to begin with, the probably the biggest characteristic of being a child that I had, that I've kind of taken into adulthood, is that I was desperately trying to please people. So there were occasions where my mum just wasn't able to cope. And we found ourselves in difficult situations sometimes at home, and kind of assumed the role of carer, like not in a formal capacity, but I would take care of my brothers. I would be bothered about the house being clean, where my mum might have not really been that bothered, or had now looking back, 1,000 other things to deal with. But I would be desperately just wanting to fit in and having this image that I wanted to portray. So I really wanted to please people, so I would be looking after my brothers, cleaning the house, doing the washing, hoovering, kind of hating the idea of anyone coming to the house if it hadn't been tidied. And from being about 8 year old, I was
Yeah.
very kind of, and that kind of instilled this real need to people please, and to kind of show up in a particular way. And I think that when I got to college and started studying to become a lawyer, and at university, I think that really kicked in a bit more, because now I'm kind of, I went to university. I mean, I only moved to Sunderland, but to a girl from South Shields who'd never really been anywhere, even Sunderland felt like such a huge jump. And leaving home and moving in with a group of strangers at university, got moved into halls. You just got grouped with a group of girls. I don't think any of them won the course that I was on. They were all doing different courses, and so being thrown in to kind of make friends with all of these different people who seem to come from so much more fancier backgrounds, and kind of, so you're automatically trying to fit in and people please. And I think that is a really difficult mindset to go into, because you're not fully being yourself. You're trying to almost mimic how other people are behaving, so you can fit in. And I think that
Yeah.
is I think I did that without realizing that I was doing it. And I think that's quite a negative mindset, really, isn't it? To think that rather than just going in and saying, this is who I am, embracing who you are, introducing yourself to all these new students, and kind of trying to find your way at university, and also to prove, to show that you do know what you're doing and you are intelligent enough to learn the subject and what have you. But instead, I very much went in thinking, oh, they're going to figure me out. They're going to know that I'm not good enough. They're going to know that I'm not intelligent enough, or that I shouldn't really be here. And so because of that, I felt this compulsion to really please people. I hated saying no to people, just anything to kind of fit in and to get by. And I think the people pleasing leads on to the imposter syndrome as well. I think they both probably go, I don't know what came first, to be honest, but they go hand in hand for me.
Yeah.
And I think that mindset as well, really feeling, I've got no business being a law student. Who do I think I am? No one, not even myself, expected me to be able to do that. And so actually getting on the course and being able to prove to myself and everyone else, you know, it was quite a lot of pressure that I put on myself, because being able to demonstrate that you're good enough means you can't fail. And the expectation that I put on myself to kind of, well, it's you cannot fail. So um because the thought of failure and having to go back home and saying, well, yeah, I'm not good enough, I shouldn't have done that, I've spent lots of money and time and everyone was right, just the thought of that was terrifying.
Yeah.
So I think these negative mindsets that I had, I think really I placed a really a greater expectation on myself than, was in my control. Now, looking back, I think, there was some of these things that I was putting pressure on myself. I have to achieve this goal. I have to, get this particular grade. Some of that stuff's outside of your control now. And I think I'm more able to manage realistic expectations. I still put
Mm.
pressure on myself. I still, like to push myself out of the box and aim for things that not aren't necessarily automatically in your grasp. But I think I'm more able to identify that, it's okay to fail and some things are outside of your control.
Yeah.
But I do think the kind of the mental health kind of where I was at by the time I got to university was in a really unhealthy relationship with myself. I didn't place any value on mental health. I didn't place any value on myself. I was just kind
Mm.
of, got to do this. I've got to get this next. I've got to pass this exam. I've got to try and find a job afterwards. I've got to do this. I've got to prove. And it was constantly, and I don't even know where the goalpost ended. It was just like you get to one thing, you're like, well, you don't even celebrate your victory. You don't celebrate, oh, I achieved that exam result that I wanted, or yes, I got onto this course. It was just there's no time to celebrate because now the goalpost has moved and you need to keep moving to prove that you've done the right thing and you're making the right decisions. And so I didn't place any value on celebrating the little wins. And I had no respect for my mental health. I think that's probably the
Mm.
better way to describe it. So
Yeah.
by the time I finished university, I had a really unhealthy relationship with food. I hardly slept. I noticed I don't even know what I like food that I was eating. I don't know how. I don't know how I actually had enough energy to do everything and to still function, because by the time I got to leaving university, I was at university full time. I'd had a couple of jobs. One of them was in a nightclub so I was working. It was when the late licensing had changed. So I was at university. I was at the nightclub on the nighttime until sometimes 3 in the morning or something, and then you're up the next day early for uni. Or I'd also got a job in a solicitor's, so then I'm up for the solicitors. And I lived on Nutella and toast and Red Bull. I
Oh
don't
my God.
I don't even like there's things that I used to eat and drink then. Now it's just kind of like I don't drink Red Bull now. I used to drink about 3, like on a night time to go to this nightclub and then to be able to get up the next day for
Mm.
work. I would have about 3 cans of Red Bull, um,
Wow.
and
And
I wouldn't eat much. Just so
mhm.
the shopping that I would go shopping, and I didn't have any money. I had 2 or 3 jobs. I was at uni. I had to pay for a flat that I had. Um, uh, when I went shopping, I would buy. It's quite embarrassing to say now, but I would buy like bread, the cheapest bread you could think of, Nutella, always had to be the decent Nutella though.
Mm.
You've got to have some treats. And Haribos. I would
Mm.
buy jellies, sweets,
Mm.
and there would be no, I don't know how, I never ate out. Like, I don't actually know how I got through, because I spent a lot of time just eating hardly
Mm.
anything. And I think that I developed a really poor relationship with food. from kind of an image side, a body kind of being self-conscious about your body, but also from a financial side where I can't justify buying that. And then now looking back, I realize kind of that's kind of the circle that I was in when I was a kid, because everything that you had, every penny that was spent when you were a kid, it was thought out. You eat what's in the cupboards. If you don't like your tea, you just don't get anything else. It was kind of every penny counted. And I think I never realised, but I was kind of doing that to myself when I got to university. It was like, well, I can't justify going to buy that food, so I'll just not bother. And I got into a really kind of unhealthy mindset, which thankfully I have improved on. But it was, I never realised at the time how much I hadn't really nurtured my mental health. You just, again, there wasn't really anybody saying and shouting about, are you getting enough sleep? Are you taking care of yourself? And are you being mindful? Are you reflecting on how you're feeling? Are you taking control of how you're feeling? Are you asking for help? That just never kind of wasn't on my radar at all.
Yeah. And obviously that link between what you eat and your mental health as well. And so you've talked about really struggling with anxiety. Now, you said when you left university, but it took you a long time, didn't it, to qualify as a solicitor? Was it, how many years was it? 40? Was it?
So I started, so the first time that I started studying law was when I went to college at 16. And then I qualified when I was 30. So it took me 14 years from kind of first deciding law is what I want to do, from kind of college, university, then law school, a training contract, which is similar to an apprenticeship for when you want to be qualify as a solicitor. There was all these different steps, and when I wasn't studying or when I wasn't doing my training contract, I was gaining experience working in a law firm or just trying to get some kind of experience. So in all, it took 14 years. And for really, up until someone said, you're a solicitor, you've now qualified, the pressure that was 14 years of just continuous pressure.
Like a pressure cooker, just waiting to...
Yeah.
So kind of thinking of some of what you said there about, you weren't reflecting, you weren't thinking about mental health even because nobody spoke about it and so on. So to kind of bring us to where you are now and how you got here, like what was the point that you realised those kinds of things should be a part of life and that the way you were feeling and everything that went into that, like the poor sleep, the overthinking, stressing, like really criticising yourself, poor diet, like how did that come together to reach that point of a crossroads where you chose to now go on this journey that you're on?
It wasn't even that long ago, which is the sad reality. So in 2015, so I was getting married in 2015, and at that point, I was qualified, newly qualified. So the pressure of qualifying, and actually proving that I could become a solicitor after all this time, that had gone. But I was left with all of these really bad habits. And obviously, I still wanted to prove that I now deserved to be a solicitor. I now deserved, not only have I proven I could get there, that it wasn't a fluke, that I was, I should, and I'm good at it. And so the pressure continued, but in a different way. But the bad habits that I developed. So, like I say, I had a really unhealthy relationship with food. Would only eat certain food and very little of it. I would go all day without eating food. I would go to work. And I had, the other thing is I had this real big, and still do, compulsion to exercise. So this kind of, the way that I was able to control how I felt was I would work out a lot. So, so I would go to work at a solicitor's all day. I would take a smoothie a fruit smoothie that I'd made at home. I would have that at about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. That's all I would have. And then I would go to the gym for hours. Then I would come home and I might have a bit of toast or something, ridiculous or not much at all. Or, when I met my husband and we moved in together, then I would have like a proper meal. I only started really eating real meals when I met Phil, which is, it's just ridiculous, really. There's so many foods that I had never even hadn't tried, just normal basic fruits and vegetables that I just was petrified of trying spending money on something in case I didn't like it, then it was a waste. So yeah, it's been a whole learning curve. But yeah, by the time I got to kind of qualifying, and in 2015, so I'd been qualified for 2 years, I was getting married, and this really ramped up. I was, I hate being the kind of focal point of something because I always worry that people are going to be looking at me and judging me, like, what do I look like? What do I sound like? And when I knew, it was coming up to our wedding, it just got completely out of control. I stopped eating most things. I went on this ridiculous diet. Have you heard of paleo?
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know
Like
what I was
it's like
thinking.
the caveman.
Yeah, I don't know. But then there was
Mm.
hardly anything that I liked to eat, so I just didn't really eat very much. I exercised more and more and more, and I got into a really kind of anxiety was through the roof. I hadn't even really identified. I knew I'd always had this undercurrent of kind of buzz in my body where I just felt chaotic like all the time, but I hadn't ever really identified it as anxiety. Hadn't really spoken to anybody about it. But
Yeah.
yeah, in 2015, it got so bad that both my husband and my best friend Craig, like separately, said, "You need to go and get help." And that was like a massive, massive wake up call because I was just like, "Help!" It's just because we're getting married and I'm just trying to fit into my wedding dress, or I'm just, I'm busy, I'm trying to do my job, I'm trying to plan the wedding, and it was just I had an excuse for everything. And I didn't think that the doctor was going to say there was anything major or that I need to be of concerned. I was just, a bit overwhelmed. That's what I thought. So I reluctantly agreed to get help in the 2015. And I'll never forget it. Went to the doctors, told them this is like kind of what's going on. I don't think it's a big deal. This is what I eat. This is how much I exercise. I'm only here because like I've kind of told me friends and family I'll come. And I remember the doctor, it probably wasn't in as large a text as I kind of imagine it in my head, but I remember he wrote, like I seen it on the screen in big letters, eating disorder. And I just remember being like, oh, he's obviously got the wrong idea because, I don't have problems with eating. I'm just fussy, or kind of, but yeah, so the doctor was just like, no, actually, how you've described things, you have, disordered eating habits, you need help. So I was referred and I've had CBT, I've had CAT, I've back to therapy, I've been in and out of kind of therapy for 10 years. But what I discovered was, well, I was given every label you could think of at that first session, which was helpful in some respects. But then if you get bogged down on, oh, I've got this, I've got that, I've got that, then, that in itself creates kind of this,
Self-fulfilling prophecy kind of
yeah.
thing.
So I was diagnosed with general anxiety disorder, low self-esteem, an eating disorder, body dysmorphia, OCD. The list was endless. And like when you think back now, I think obviously a lot of those things there were signs, and the people who cared about me, it got to the point where they were just it was kind of like an intervention. And so, since then, and I'd never really valued or given any thought to talking about problems, asking for help. asking for help is failure, or was in my mind. I've set these expectations, these goals. I just have to crack on. The pressure will just have to, I'll have to just deal with it. And I'd never really put myself in a vulnerable position where I was kind of relying on somebody else to help. I'm fiercely independent, and I always have been. And so when I went to therapy, it was the first time just talking to a random stranger about how you feel, why you feel it. And then it all kind of made a lot more sense. So the negative, bad habits that I had developed, I've been on this kind of healing, discovery, recovery kind of journey for 10 years. And during that 10 years, I think that if I hadn't started addressing the mental health side of things, if I hadn't started looking at why I behave the way I do, why I'm worried about what people think, why I worry so much about failure and fitting in, and, if I hadn't have actually sat and asked the why and answered it, I'm not sure if my career would have progressed as it has. I'm not sure if I would have been able to. I feel like there would have had to have came a point where I broke under the
Yeah.
immense pressure that I placed on myself. So I'm just really grateful that although I couldn't see it, I was surrounding myself with, I was in a supportive, environment where other people were kind of looking out for me without me even, what. And, the awful thing is I was so annoyed about them kind of interfering and, just having an opinion or judging, or, because then that made me feel, oh God, like I'm not good enough, or it's just a constant spiral, isn't it? So,
Yeah.
but I'm just so grateful that they, like my husband, my friend,
Mhm.
they put themselves in a really awkward, uncomfortable position, one where I was like quite rude and, not very nice to them. And they still did that because they knew that it was important. And I think it's really important now, that I've got a lovely supportive network of people, like at home, like professionally, personally. I never valued that before because I was always just kind of insular. I'm just independent. I'm just
Mm.
gonna, I can't rely on anybody else. I'm just doing things for myself, and I have to take care of. Like, I didn't really share or rely on other people, but now I've got this lovely big kind of supportive network, and addressing mental health has been an absolute kind of eye opener. And now I'm a huge advocate for it. And so when you said, asked us if I wanted to come on and have a chat, I was just so pleased to do that, because talking about health, talking about women, talking about mental health, I wish it had been done so much sooner, because I feel like I struggle quite a lot because the resources and the knowledge and just the willingness to talk about what used to be a taboo subject, if it had have been available earlier, you always think, well, what could have happened? What mistakes might I have
Yeah.
avoided? Could I have been well sooner? Could I have avoided, like I put my body through awful, from being very young until 10 years ago. So I'm just so
Mm.
grateful that mental health is now, people aren't afraid to talk about it. And,
Mm.
this will be the first time actually when I'm thinking about it. Like, there's a lot of people in my life who don't know any of this. This is only very close people, like my family. Nobody even really knows about like the struggles that I had, because it just kind of didn't feel relevant or kind of important. But now I'm being more of an advocate of just trying to be true and honest with kind of who I am, where I've came from, what struggles and challenges I've had, and how that makes me the person that I am now. And, that I am more resilient. I am, I'm classic underdog case, like I come out fighting. And I think for personally and professionally, I think I'm just trying to embrace that a little bit more and be kind of proud, which is even
Yeah.
saying that word, like It just doesn't feel good when you say that you're proud of yourself. It makes us feel a little uncomfortable. But yeah, that's kind of the whole point of trying to talk about things as much as possible, because I want to say that I'm proud without it making me feel like I'm cringing a little bit.
And even to say it, that was just such a huge achievement. Your story has so many similarities to mine. Like, we do have to open up about our mental health, and you've shared lots of things that are sadly very normal for girls and women. Thinking about your body image, about your worth, about whether you're good enough, whether what you're trying to do for a career is good enough, the judgment of others, whether it's because it's linked to value or those beliefs you've got around money or family or yourself. Yeah, there's just so much wrapped up in what you've shared that I know lots of people will resonate with. And the thing that obviously I see in the work I do is that most women haven't thought about all of this and haven't done anything to start to shift that narrative, those beliefs, those things that they're carrying with them. And what I am seeing is that, and there's not really research into this as such, but I do feel like in midlife and perimenopause, when our hormones start to change and things become imbalanced and we have these changes and remodeling going on in our brain, a lot of that baggage, for want of a better word, that women are carrying just starts to crumble and become a real challenge. And I think that's why we see in midlife many women have breakdowns, go on antidepressants, struggle with who they are, their self-worth. We see suicide rates the highest in women between 45 and 55. Divorce rates are highest in that age range again, which some of that can be an empowerment thing. But yeah, I think we've got to step into who we are. And so I love that that's what you're about, is, you were in survival mode for many, many years, but now, and let's circle back to where I started with asking you how you would describe yourself right now. And you said that work in progress and how you are connecting with who you are and realizing, that you want great stuff in your career. You want to impact girls and women so that they are open about their mental health. And so all of that is something to be really proud of, because you've come a long way, haven't you? And you've really changed those habits. Yes, some of it's very deep ingrained. I know you've had a lot of therapy, but when you first told me you had a backstory like this, you just said that you could resonate with my story, and you said, I'm on this journey. I think was how you described it. And I'm on a journey of improving my health and working on my mental health and doing lots of things. So you've really embraced all of that, haven't you?
Yeah. I think it took me a long time to do that, though. So when I first went to therapy for the very first time in 2015, I had no expectations of I didn't know, I'm kind of picturing, you're lying on a sofa like you see on TV and someone's taking notes. I had no idea what to expect. And I don't know if I really bought into the therapy as a tool to help. I didn't know if it was just, I thought, I'm just going to go along. It's going to be like this tick box exercise. I'm not really going to get anything from it. And I was totally wrong. I mean, I know therapy isn't for everybody. Some people just don't, do well in that environment and need a different type of intervention, help, support, whatever it is. But therapy doesn't work for everybody. But for me, it really made me kind of hold myself accountable. Because up until that point, I was just very much, well, this is just what happens. I'm not, it's not my fault to a certain extent. And I'm just kind of, this is just what it's like. I'm accepting that this is how I feel. I always have this. I didn't even know that this undercurrent of this, honestly, my whole body used to just vibrate constantly, just like this, like teetering on the edge of a panic attack. So this constant, I always thought I was just a bit dramatic because the little things would really, really tip me over the edge. A big thing didn't really, big or small, it would impact me the same. And then what I learned through therapy is, when you look at yourself on a chart of kind of how calm you are and kind of how how calm you are, and also kind of the trigger, like how severe it is it minor, is it major? And I would always be kind of at a 9, like a 9 on kind of feeling anxious. And so even the tiniest minor setback, minor trigger would put me to a 10, and I would be full blown panic attack. So even the little things would get to me. And I think people who didn't understand me, and even myself, thought maybe I was just, God, why is she bothered about that? But it's just, whereas it might take, say, for my husband, for instance, he's the most laid back guy you'll ever meet. He's like at a 0, he's so chilled. And so it takes him lots and lots and lots of little things before he's even anywhere near where I'm just always there, or I was. So one little thing would be enough. But I've really noticed that I only discovered that through therapy, and I only discovered that because I was willing to reflect and analyze and be accountable for some of the actions that I've taken and some of the decisions that I've made, but also to embrace the fact that you're not in control of everything. Like, this managing expectations is something now that I go to often in my kind of toolkit for kind of just getting through things more positively, is kind of acknowledging and accepting that you only can do so much. And so having realistic expectations on whatever it is that you're involved in, it allows you to take the pressure off. Because I realized actually it was the pressure. I've lived under pressure for decades, and it's been self-imposed. So taking back kind of ownership of kind of what you're allowing yourself to experience, and managing expectations has really helped. But again, I only discovered that over this 10 years of reflecting. And aside from therapy, I mean, I've always exercised ever since I was young. I remember I actually think the issue with exercise probably started when I was at school. I used to be studying for my GCSEs, but I would be working out at the same time. So I'd be running, holding a textbook, jogging in the house, reading, or I'd be doing sit-ups, and like the book would be on the table in front of us, and I used to work in a nightclub. I used to take me books to the nightclub and I would be like, I used to work in the DJ booth, and I would have the books on the speaker in the dark where all the strobes were going off, and I'd be reading while I was working, because instead of kind of doing it earlier, I would have worked out, or I would have been exercising. So I just had such a disordered way of kind of, like, I had these coping mechanisms and strategies that were working, but not very well. But yeah, I've always exercised. And one of the things that I absolutely love, which I do it pretty much every day, is yoga. And although that's for exercising, now over the last 10 years, it's very much became more of kind of a mindset. It's more to do with mental health than exercise. And before, all of my workouts would be
practice.
All of the workouts that I would do would be, because you want your body to look in a particular way, or you need to burn this many calories or whatever. But now, I mean, I love yoga. I've done it since I was about 15. But now it's it's shifted as to why I do it. So, and I think that helps as well. So along with therapy and understanding who I am a bit more, kind of taking the time to really, breathe mindfully, and to spend however much time it is, like half an hour, just on the yoga mat, but for more positive reasons, kind of doing it. And I think but it's been such a learning curve over the last 10 years. And I think because I said I'm a work in progress, I think that's because I'd imagine in the next 10 years, I'm going to discover so much more as well. I think when I'm managing my expectations, I don't think I'm going to get to, next week and be like, I understand everything, I'm cured, everything makes loads more sense. I think I think I have to accept that it's just an ongoing thing. And I think
Yeah.
also that the thing that I spoke to my therapist about is, which I've noticed that I do a lot, when you start to feel like you're doing well, when you start to think, oh, I'm calmer, I'm breathing more mindfully, I'm on top of all of these things, that I was struggling with. As soon as I feel like I'm getting into a good place, I stop. I stop doing all of the things. It's like I suppose when if you're unwell and you take medication, and then when you feel better, you stop the medication, but the doctor says make sure you complete the course. It's like that with mental health practices. I'm still struggling to accept that these are just things that have to be done daily forever. I think.
Yeah, it's like they're preventative,
Mhm.
not there to react and respond. Yeah,
Mhm.
it's like a form of self-sabotage, I think, really, isn't it, in a way?
Mhm.
So I'm just thinking, to wrap us up, Kat, I'd love to use what you've learned, and I really do think this journey you're on is such an
Mhm.
incredible message to get across to other women, because, as I said at the start, there is no finish line to being healthy,
Mhm.
and that in itself doesn't mean, oh God, this is so hard. It actually means this is
Mhm.
great. Like, look at you, what am I going to learn about me and
Mhm.
change to have an even better life over the next 10 years? So for someone listening who's thinking, yeah, I struggle with, fear of judgment from others, or just the expectations I
Mhm.
feel are on me, and has whatever noise in their life
Mhm.
going on that's really, having an impact on how they feel. And I'm sure there'll be everyone listening is going to resonate
Mhm.
in some way with. What would be 3 steps you would say to somebody to start taking to help shift them into this place where you are, which is on this journey to
Mhm.
discover yourself more, connect with yourself, and ultimately live a much healthier life?
Yeah. So for me, it's definitely about the 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 three things that I'm kind of now focusing on in order to kind of build more healthier habits for having a positive mindset, which is kind of the journey that I'm on. That's the whole purpose. The end result, I hope, is to be more positive and more well balanced in kind of outlook and behaviors. So the three things, which I've already mentioned, some of them on, um, I, I think I've actually already touched upon them during the talk, but the three things that I'm really trying to focus most on, breathing, is one, because it's just I have this app on my phone. It's a mindfulness chime, and it goes off every hour. And it's to remind me on the hour, every hour, to breathe, like sit back. And even if it's just for a minute, just to concentrate on your breathing, to regulate the nervous system, to regulate anxiety, to take a moment. So I think that's a really healthy habit
Mm.
that anyone can do, because I know it sounds a little silly to begin with, because we all are breathing. And when my therapist suggested to me, I was a bit like, all right, I'll do it. But I wasn't really committed. And it totally changed how I was feeling inside. Like you can absolutely see a huge difference. So the breathing is absolutely crucial. Talking, spent so many years not asking for help, that now a really great tool for a healthy mindset is to ask for help. And it doesn't have to be through a paid therapist, or a medical practitioner or anything like that. Finding somebody that you trust, a friend, a family member that you can completely be honest with, but also somebody who can be honest with you as well. You don't
Yeah.
want to just be confiding in somebody who's just a yes person. You need to be able to talk to somebody who tells you when things aren't great. So that's something that I didn't used to do, that I'm grateful that, as well as having a therapist, I have some really great people in my life that I can share things with and talk to about. So if you can, breathing and talking is absolutely crucial. And then, as I said previously, being more realistic with the expectations that you put on yourself,
Mhm.
is a really empowering tool that I use now, because before I would think that I have to do everything. I have to do it all myself. I have to take control of everything and be fiercely independent and kind of, but now I'm a bit more realistic in what I actually can do, what I'm capable of, both physically and mentally. And so I think those three things really have helped me. And I've noticed more so than previous that those are the three things that I keep defaulting to when I do start feeling negative, when I am starting to feel a little bit worried or anxious. That's like my checklist first. Like, what am I expecting from myself? Have I spoken to anybody? Am I just bottling this up? And, let's take a breath and reassess. And those three things are really helping me. And there's, I'm sure I'm going to discover more along the way, but currently those three are like my go-to toolkit.
Yeah. Oh, that's incredible. I think that's just such brilliant advice to finish on. And again, that those are things which don't have to cost anything financially. You don't necessarily need to, have specific skills or tools, like, practical things. This is all stuff you can get for free, get a bit of insight using this podcast, for example, but other things to say, well, how do I do that reflection? How can I breathe in a more calming way? So yeah, that's fantastic. And just to say huge thanks for being so honest and vulnerable. And I really appreciate you taking, your time out to share this, but also just your energy to share this, and what you mentioned about many people in your life still not knowing what journey you've been on. I know from my journey being in the same place where I hadn't shared anything about my backstory until I came into this space and set the business up. But then I knew how, I think it was only when I did start sharing it, I realised how much a part of the healing and acceptance journey it is. Yeah. So I hope you sharing this is part of your forward journey, not looking back, but actually going, this is part of that next 10-year plan and helping me to move more towards that place of balance and calm and self-belief, which you definitely deserve. So thank you.
Oh, thank you for talking to me about it, because I think that it is definitely kind of a step on the healing journey. I think accepting who you are, you only can do that if you acknowledge where you've came from, if you acknowledge the things that you've done, if you acknowledge the thoughts and the feelings that you had, and then say, okay, now what? Kind of. And I think, I'm not ashamed of who I am or where I came from. They're just kind of, all of those things that have happened have got me to this point. And, I'm sure in 10 years' time, another conversation, perhaps there'll be things that happen in the next 10 years where I think, oh, actually, they've getting me to the next point. We're all just on this journey of continuously learning. And so I'm really grateful to hear from other people as well, to listen to other people's journeys. And I learn a lot from, podcasts and listening to interviews of people just really being authentically themselves, because if you're authentic, you're more likely to kind of make an impact because people resonate with what you're saying. It's empowering just to kind of own who you are and to be honest and truthful. And so coming on here, it is a positive step in the journey, and I feel quite empowered after doing it. So thank you.
Oh, good. And just what you said there on authentic, it's so contradictory in that way of being and living is what helps you to actually enjoy life and embrace the hard stuff as well as enjoy the good stuff. But yet so many women aren't able to do that because they think if they live a certain way, that's going to be what brings acceptance and then success and happiness and so on, and many of us are therefore kind of acting out, thinking we need to behave a certain way. So I think that's a brilliant term for someone to reflect on after listening, is, are you authentically being who you are to live that
Mm-hmm.
authentic life, because that's an easier life at the end of the day. So
Yeah.
as Kat said, you know, if you do have a story as well to share, or you listen to this and think, and yes, tick the box, that connects with my story and how I am and so on, reach out to Kat. I'm going to pop into the show notes how you can connect with her on LinkedIn. And I will just say, to kind of end, one of the things that Kat is doing, because she is now in this place of knowing how important it is to embrace who she is and live authentically, is hosting once every 2 months sessions called Empower Your Voice locally in the Northeast, to help other people know the value of your own voice in whatever form that might be. It might be presenting professionally or just speaking up in your family. It could be anything, but just owning your voice. And that's something she's doing along with some of the people that I've been a part of, which is fantastic. And really, I know, helping you, helping me, helping everybody to just be more proud of yourself in whatever form that takes. So yeah, lots of things going on that you could perhaps reach out to Kat and find out more about, especially if you live locally. So thank you again, Kat. It's been really enjoyable and just humbling, I think, to listen to your story for me as well.
Oh, thank you for having me, Nicola.
You're welcome.